I'll give you $100,000 if you serve me in Korean. The words shattered the silence at the Azure Room like a gunshot. Gregory Harrington's voice carried that particular brand of cruelty that only comes from a lifetime of never being told no. $100 bills fell onto Marcus Thompson's silver tray one by one, 50 of them, creating a grotesque fan of green paper under the crystal chandelier. $50,000 scattered across his tray like an insult wrapped in currency. Marcus stood frozen in his white serving jacket, 27 years old and invisible in these spaces for 2 years now. Just another black face in uniform, dismissed before he even opened his mouth. The entire restaurant went silent. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died. Every eye in Boston's most exclusive dining room turned toward them. $50,000, boy. Gregory drew out the word deliberately, making sure everyone understood the power dynamic he was establishing. That's yours if you can do one simple thing. My Korean associates here need you to take their order, describe tonight's menu, answer their questions, all in fluent Korean. Think you can handle that, or is that too much education for someone like you? The nervous laughter that followed was the sound of people who knew they were witnessing something wrong but weren't sure how to stop it. Some looked away, suddenly fascinated by their lobster. Others leaned forward with morbid curiosity. The entire restaurant had become a Roman Colosseum, and Marcus was standing in the center while the emperor decided his fate. $50,000. The number echoed in Marcus's mind with the weight of everything it represented. 6 months of his father's cancer treatments. The experimental immunotherapy their insurance had denied 4 times. The foreclosure notice on their family home in Roxbury. The constant crushing pressure that made every day feel like drowning in invisible water. But Marcus knew this wasn't about money. This was about power. About Gregory proving to his 3 Korean investors, men considering a $200 million deal, that he could humiliate a black server just because he could. You see, gentlemen, Gregory continued, gesturing at Marcus like a museum exhibit. This is what I love about America. Everyone thinks they're special. This young man probably thinks he's going somewhere in life. But reality is, he's here serving us because that's all he's capable of. Some people are meant to lead and some people are meant to serve. That's just the natural order. One of the Korean executives, an older man with silver hair, shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Harrington, I'm not certain this is appropriate. But Gregory waved him off. This is educational. You're investing $200 million with me. You need to understand how I operate, how I identify frauds. This man is clearly lying about his abilities, and I'm going to prove it. What Gregory didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that 3 years ago Marcus had been Dr. Marcus Thompson, Ph.D. in applied linguistics from Boston University at 24. Published author. Keynote speaker at the International Conference on Korean Linguistic Integration in Seoul, where he'd addressed 800 people in flawless Korean for 45 minutes without notes. His dissertation on Korean business language patterns had been published by Oxford University Press. Samsung had offered him a consulting position starting at $200,000 a year. Then his father got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The medical bills came like a flood. Marcus used his savings, maxed out credit cards, borrowed against his future. The university asked him to choose between research and his father. There was no choice. He took leave that became permanent when they filled his position. Academic colleagues stopped returning calls. Job offers evaporated. Within 6 months, Dr. Marcus Thompson became just Marcus, a man with an impressive resume nobody wanted to read and a father dying in a hospital bed that cost $3,000 per day. The Azure Room hired him because they needed servers who could handle demanding clientele. They didn't ask about his doctorate. They saw a well-spoken young man who needed work desperately. For 2 years, Marcus had carried trays and poured wine for people who made more in a week than he made in a year. He'd smiled when they snapped fingers at him, nodded when they interrupted him, swallowed his pride every single night. But this was different. This was deliberate, calculated humiliation designed for maximum impact. I accept, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying unexpected authority. Gregory blinked, his smile faltering. What? I accept your challenge, Mr. Harrington. I will take your guest's order in Korean, describe tonight's menu with full cultural context, and answer any questions about Korean dining traditions. When I'm finished, you will pay me the $50,000 right here, in front of everyone. The silence was absolute. Gregory stared, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping on dry land. Then his arrogance reasserted itself. Well, well. Looks like we have tonight's entertainment, folks. You're about to witness what happens when arrogance meets reality. The eldest Korean executive tried again. Mr. Harrington, please, this isn't necessary. No, Mr. Kim. You need to see this. You need to understand how I identify people who try to pass themselves off as something they're not. Gregory turned back to Marcus with exaggerated sympathy. But let's make this interesting. If you succeed, I pay you. When you fail, you get down on your knees right here and apologize to every person in this restaurant for wasting our time. You'll publicly admit you're a fraud, and you'll work here for free for a month. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. Several diners looked away, unable to watch. Something shifted inside Marcus, a door opening that had been locked for 2 years. The anger he'd swallowed, the humiliation he'd endured, the indignity of being treated as less than human, all of it crystallized into something cold and sharp. I accept all your conditions, Marcus said clearly. But let's raise the stakes. If I can explain the historical and cultural significance of each dish, discuss regional variations in Korean cuisine, and demonstrate proper business dining etiquette, you double it to $100,000. The dining room erupted in whispers. Gregory's face went pale, then flushed red. 100,000? You're insane. And if I fail, Marcus continued, in addition to everything you said, I resign from fine dining permanently. I'll never work in a restaurant like this again. Mr. Kim stood up in alarm. Young man, please don't do this. Whatever point you're trying to make, it's not worth this humiliation. But Marcus kept his eyes on Gregory. Do we have a deal, Mr. Harrington? Or are you having second thoughts about your certainty? Gregory was trapped. Every person in the room was watching. His investors were leaning forward. His reputation as a ruthless dealmaker who never backed down was on the line. Fine, Gregory said tightly. 100,000 when you fail. Deal. They shook hands, Gregory's grip aggressive and uncomfortable. If you're still watching this, don't scroll past. Because what happened next proves that some people carry more strength in their silence than others ever find in their power. Before I begin, Marcus said, Mr. Kim, do you and your colleagues speak Korean fluently? Mr. Kim nodded slowly. Of course. It's our native language. Good. Then you'll evaluate not just my vocabulary, but my pronunciation, my honorifics, my cultural context. Marcus turned to the entire room. I want everyone to understand that what you're about to witness is not a party trick. When I'm finished, these gentlemen will confirm whether my Korean is authentic. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. Stop stalling. The sooner you fail, the sooner we can all move on. Marcus turned to the Korean executives, and something in his posture changed. His shoulders relaxed. His expression softened. When he spoke, the transformation was complete. Annyeonghaseyo, GWIHAN Santnim Yuriobun, Marcus began, and the Korean that flowed from him was so natural, so perfectly inflected with Seoul's formal business dialect, that all three Korean executives physically recoiled. Janun Marcus Thompson Imnida. Onul Jianyik GWIHAN Santnim Dul K6 Seo Bizarul Dural Su Isnian Geosul De Danhi Yang Wang Wang Euro Sengakamnida. Mr. Kim's mouth dropped open. The second executive sat up so straight he nearly knocked over his water. The third set down his phone with a sharp click and stared. This wasn't conversational Korean. This wasn't textbook Korean. This was the Korean of someone who had lived the language, breathed the culture, understood layers of meaning that separated competent speakers from true masters. Marcus continued, his Korean flowing like music. Geonun Yeogi Bostoni Isnian Geohui Restaurantizio GWIHAN Santnim Dul K Onul Geoniagi Ui Tuk Bile Menu Rule Sogaihe Durjasumnida. He described the first dish, kimchi jjigae prepared following Jeolla province traditions. He explained fermentation processes using earthenware pots buried in winter, the specific peppers from Yangjiang County, the 40-day timeline that produced authentic flavors. The vocabulary was technical, intimate, the kind that suggested hands-on experience, not book learning. The second executive asked a sharp question in Korean, clearly testing him. Marcus answered without hesitation, discussing lactobacillus bacteria, salt ratios from Sinan Island's tidal flats, fermentation temperatures in Celsius. Gregory's face progressed through shades of pale to red to ashen gray. His hands gripped the table, knuckles white. Marcus transitioned to Galbi, explaining Gyeonggi province traditions and Suwon's Joseon dynasty perfection of preparation methods. He discussed marinades with 3-year fermented soy sauce, the cultural significance of cooking over applewood. He shifted his register slightly, moving from very formal to respectfully intimate, showing awareness of when to adjust formality levels. Mr. Kim suddenly stood up. For a moment, Marcus thought he'd made an error. But then the older man bowed deeply, the formal bow of profound respect. When he straightened, his eyes glistened with tears. "Young man," Mr. Kim said in Korean, his voice thick with emotion. "In 30 years of international business, I have never heard a non-native speaker demonstrate such profound understanding. Your Korean is not just fluent. It is enlightened. You speak with the soul of someone who has truly lived our culture." He switched to English so everyone could understand. "Your pronunciation is perfect Seoul dialect. Your honorifics are flawless. Your cultural knowledge is extraordinary. Are you truly working here as a server? This makes no sense." The second executive was typing frantically. "I'm looking you up now. Dr. Marcus Thompson, Ph.D. from Boston University. Your dissertation on Korean linguistic integration. I've read it. Required reading at Korea University. You spoke at the international conference in Seoul? You consulted for Samsung?" Marcus nodded quietly. "Yes, sir. That was me. 3 years ago, before life took a different direction." Gregory finally found his voice, strangled and desperate. "This is impossible. This is some kind of setup." "Setup what?" Mr. Kim turned to Gregory, his expression ice-cold. "That you would insult one of the most qualified Korean language experts in America? That you would try to humiliate a scholar whose work is respected in my country's top universities." "He can't be a real doctor," Gregory stammered, face shining with sweat. "Doctors don't work as servers." "It makes perfect sense," Marcus said quietly. 3 years ago, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Medical bills bankrupted my family. I lost my university position when I took leave to care for him. Lost my research funding. Lost everything except my knowledge and my dignity. I've been working here for 2 years because I needed to survive, to pay for his treatment. Sometimes life doesn't care about your PhD or publications. Sometimes life demands you do whatever it takes to care for the people you love." The silence was crushing. Several diners were crying openly. "Mr. Harrington," Mr. Kim said, voice like ice, "you just attempted to publicly destroy a man whose intelligence far exceeds your own. You tried to humiliate him based on nothing but prejudice. You looked at a black man in a uniform and decided he must be ignorant, uneducated, less than human." "I didn't know," Gregory protested weakly. "That's exactly the point," Marcus said softly. "You didn't know, but you assumed. You saw my skin color and my job and decided that was all I could be. It never occurred to you that maybe there was a story behind my circumstances. You didn't ask. You didn't wonder. You just assumed you were better than me because you have money and I don't." The second executive shook his head in disgust. "My company was prepared to invest $80 million in your project. But I cannot do business with a man who treats people this way. I cannot partner with someone whose character is so fundamentally flawed." "No, please." Gregory stood so fast his chair crashed backward. "This is just a misunderstanding. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," the third executive said coldly. "My firm has a policy. We don't invest with racists. We don't do business with people who believe money makes them superior. You just failed the most important test, the test of basic human decency. Mr. Kim pulled out his checkbook. Dr. Thompson, Mr. Harrington clearly cannot be trusted to honor his debts. My company will provide the $100,000 he owes you. He began writing quickly. Additionally, I invite you to visit our offices tomorrow morning. We're expanding our American operations and desperately need someone with your expertise. The position pays $180,000 per year, includes full health benefits, and would allow you to practice your actual profession again. Marcus felt his knees go weak. He gripped the table for support. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, the second executive added. My firm also needs consultants for our Korean expansion. Someone with your qualifications is exactly what we've been searching for. The third executive stood. Dr. Thompson, my cultural consulting firm has been trying to find someone with your credentials for 18 months. Your dissertation is literally required reading for our consultants. The compensation starts at $150,000 plus equity. Marcus looked at the 3 business cards in his hands. Solid proof his life was about to change completely. But he felt no triumph. Only deep sadness that it had taken this much, that he'd needed to be pushed this far before his worth could be recognized. Mr. Harrington, Marcus said, turning to face him. I believe you owe me $100,000. But I think we both know you're not going to honor that debt. You're not an honorable man. So I'm giving you a choice. You can pay me what you owe, or you can spend the rest of your life knowing that the server you tried to humiliate was a better man than you'll ever be. I'll pay. Gregory fumbled for his wallet with shaking hands. I'll pay right now. No, Mr. Kim said firmly. You won't. You've done enough damage. He handed Marcus the check. Dr. Thompson, this is from my company, with our sincere apologies. Marcus looked at the check. $100,000. But it wasn't from Gregory. It was from men who recognized competence, who valued character. There is one thing I need from you, Mr. Harrington, Marcus said quietly. Not for me, but for every person you've ever looked down on. I need you to apologize. Out loud in front of everyone. Gregory looked around desperately, finding no allies, only accusing stares. I apologize, he whispered. I didn't hear you, Marcus said. I apologize, Gregory said louder, voice cracking. For what? Be specific. For assuming things about you. For being cruel. That's not good enough, Mr. Kim interjected. Apologize for your racism. For attempting to publicly humiliate an innocent person for entertainment. Gregory's face contorted with emotions he couldn't articulate. I apologize for my racism. For my prejudice. For looking at Dr. Thompson and seeing only his job and his skin color instead of his humanity. For assuming someone working as a server must be uneducated. For trying to destroy him publicly to prove my superiority. For being exactly the kind of person who makes this world worse. I judged him without knowing him. I tried to humiliate him for entertainment. And I was wrong. Completely, utterly, shamefully wrong. The dining room remained silent. Several people were crying openly. Thank you, Mr. Harrington, Marcus said quietly. I hope someday you understand why this moment matters. I hope you remember it every time you interact with someone in a service position. I hope you learn that everyone has a story, that circumstances don't define worth. He turned to the Korean executives. Gentlemen, thank you for seeing me. I'll be at your office tomorrow morning, Mr. Kim. I would be honored to work with you. The honor is ours, Dr. Thompson, Mr. Kim said, bowing deeply again. Share this story. Let the world remember what dignity costs when you refuse to surrender it, even when everything else is taken away. 6 months passed. Marcus Thompson's life transformed completely. The check paid off his father's $800,000 in medical debt. The job materialized exactly as promised. Within weeks, he was Director of International Relations at Hannock International, sitting in a corner office with harbor views and a salary over $300,000 when combined with consulting work. His father's experimental treatment, now fully covered, showed remarkable results. Tumors shrinking. Energy returning. They moved to a spacious condo in Back Bay with room for therapy equipment and his brother's college textbooks. Marcus bought his father an adjustable bed, his brother a laptop, took his family to dinner at a nice restaurant where his father smiled genuinely for the first time in 3 years. But the real transformation wasn't in his bank account. It was in how he walked through the world. The constant tension in his shoulders, the crushing weight of financial desperation, the anxiety that woke him at 3 a.m., all of it lifted. He could breathe again. Think about the future without panic. Be himself again, Dr. Marcus Thompson, not just surviving but living. His first major project was preparing executives for soul negotiations. Standing in a conference room filled with Harvard MBAs, Marcus taught them not just language but culture, not just words but meaning. He explained Nunchi, the Korean ability to gauge others' moods. He taught proper gift-giving etiquette, the importance of relationship building before business discussions. The executives listened intently, taking notes frantically, asking questions that revealed how unprepared they'd been, how much they needed his expertise. One afternoon, Mr. Kim invited Marcus to lunch at a traditional Korean restaurant. They sat on floor cushions, shared banchan, talked about everything except business. Mr. Kim told stories about his grandmother who survived the Korean War, about learning that strength meant knowing when to bend rather than break. That night at the Azure Room, Mr. Kim said, mixing soju with beer, my colleagues and I were ready to leave. We were so uncomfortable with Harrington's behavior. But then you spoke, and I heard something in your Korean that I rarely hear even from native speakers. You spoke with Jong. Jong, Marcus repeated. Attachment, affection, emotional connection. More than that, Mr. Kim smiled. It's the essence of what makes us human. Our capacity to care, to connect, to see ourselves in others. When you spoke Korean that night, you spoke with Jong. Not just correct words, but words filled with genuine respect for our culture. That's when I knew you weren't just educated. You were enlightened. They drank in comfortable silence. What happened to Harrington? Marcus asked finally. Mr. Kim's expression darkened. His story became very public. Someone recorded the entire encounter. By morning, 5 million views. By the week's end, 20 million. The headline was everywhere. Racist developer destroyed by doctoral scholar working as server. Marcus had seen the video. Everyone had sent it. Old colleagues who hadn't returned calls in 3 years suddenly reached out. Friends who'd disappeared when he declared bankruptcy reappeared with explanations. The academic community that abandoned him suddenly wanted to offer positions, grants, speaking engagements. The hypocrisy was painful. The Korean investors pulled out immediately, Mr. Kim continued. 200 million gone. But it was worse. The video went viral in Korea too. Korean netizens started boycotts. Other Asian investors pulled out. Banks questioned existing loans. Major clients canceled contracts. His business empire crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. His wife filed for divorce within a month. Took half his remaining assets. His adult children publicly disowned him, wrote open letters about their shame. I think that hurt him more than the business failures. Marcus felt complicated emotions. Part vindication. Part sadness. Where is he now? Working at a car dealership in Quincy. Sales. Makes maybe $40,000 if he's lucky. Lost his penthouse, his vacation home, his club memberships. Lives in a studio in Dorchester. Mr. Kim paused. I saw him 2 months ago. Test driving a car. He was my salesman. Didn't recognize me at first. Gave his whole pitch. Then our eyes met and recognition hit. He went pale. Asked if I wanted a different salesman. What did you do? I said no. I bought the car from him. Made sure he got the commission. $30,000, probably his biggest in months. Mr. Kim's expression was unreadable. He asked why. I told him holding grudges is exhausting, that everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, that maybe losing everything would teach him what you tried to teach him that night. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. That was kind. It wasn't kindness. It was practicality. His life is already destroyed. What good does destroying it further do? Besides, you taught me something that night. You could have been cruel. You had every right. But you didn't. You spoke to him with dignity even when he showed you none. That's strength of character. Marcus's life moved forward. His reputation was rehabilitated, enhanced even by the viral video. Universities that ignored him suddenly wanted him as guest lecturer. At first he was angry, but then he thought about students trying to learn, and realized holding grudges against institutions meant punishing people who had nothing to do with his abandonment. His first speaking engagement was at Boston University. The auditorium packed with over 300 people who'd seen the video. 3 years ago, he began, voice steady despite the tightness in his throat. I was standing in a hospital room watching my father struggle to breathe, watching medical bills accumulate faster than I could pay. I was Dr. Marcus Thompson, successful scholar, published author, sought-after consultant. And I was completely powerless to save the person who mattered most. This talk isn't really about Korean language. It's about what happens when life strips away everything you thought defined you and forces you to discover who you really are underneath all the titles and achievements. He spoke for 90 minutes without notes, weaving together stories about Korea, his father's illness, his years at the Azure Room, that fateful night. Gregory Harrington looked at me and saw only my uniform and my skin color, Marcus said. But he's not unique. He's just the most dramatic example of something that happens every day. We look at people in service positions and make assumptions. We look at immigrants with accents and assume they're uneducated, not considering they might have advanced degrees but are driving Ubers while waiting for credentials to be recognized. We don't wonder about the woman cleaning our office, don't consider she might be supporting 3 children alone or dealing with health issues that make every day a battle. The audience was silent. The lesson isn't just don't be racist, though obviously don't be. The lesson is deeper. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, wondering about their stories, treating everyone you encounter as a full human being with complexity and dignity and struggles you know nothing about. After the lecture, students lined up. A young Korean-American woman said hearing him discuss linguistic competence divorced from ethnicity had made her cry. A black student said he'd almost dropped out, but hearing Marcus's story gave him hope. An older white professor approached with tears in his eyes. Dr. Thompson, I was on the committee that decided not to hold your position. I voted with the majority because I thought we needed research productivity. I didn't think about what that decision would cost you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. He could feel anger rising, but he also saw genuine remorse. Thank you for apologizing. I hope the department changed its policies. We did, the professor said quickly. We rewrote our leave policies after what happened to you. Created a fund for faculty with medical emergencies. We're trying to do better. Progress, Marcus thought. Slow, painful, insufficient, but progress. One Sunday morning, Marcus took his father and brother to breakfast at a diner in their old Roxbury neighborhood. They sat by the window, ordered too much food, talked about everything and nothing. I'm proud of you, son, his father said suddenly, setting down his coffee and looking directly at Marcus. Not because you make good money now. I was proud when you were washing dishes to pay for my medicine. I was proud when you came home exhausted but still asked how I was feeling. Character isn't what you do when everything's going well. Character is what you do when everything falls apart. You showed me who you really are these last 3 years, and I couldn't be more proud. Marcus felt tears spill down his cheeks. I was so angry. Angry at the universe for making you sick, angry at insurance companies, angry at colleagues who abandoned me, angry at every wealthy person who treated me like I was invisible. But you never let it make you cruel, his father said. That's the difference. That's what matters. You never used your anger as an excuse to treat people badly. Even when that Harrington man tried to destroy you, you maintained your dignity. That's real strength. His brother squeezed Marcus's hand. You saved our family. When I'm a social worker helping families through crises, I'm going to tell them about you, about how refusing to give up can change everything. They sat together as morning light filtered through the windows. 3 generations of resilience eating pancakes and talking about the future. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Complete peace. Not the absence of problems, but peace that came from knowing he'd survived the worst storm and come out stronger. About 8 months after that night, Marcus received an unexpected email. Subject line: "An apology if you'll accept it." From Gregory Harrington. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know if I deserve to apologize. But I think about that night constantly. About what I did, the cruelty I displayed, the assumptions I made based on prejudice and arrogance. I've lost everything. Business, marriage, relationships with my children, my reputation. At first I was angry, felt the punishment didn't fit the crime. But I've had time to think, and I'm starting to understand I didn't lose everything because of one bad night. I lost everything because that night revealed who I actually was. I treated people terribly my entire life. I was cruel to servers, dismissive of anyone I considered beneath my status, racist in ways I didn't recognize because I thought racism was only burning crosses, not realizing my daily assumptions about people's worth based on their job or skin color was just as destructive. I'm working at a car dealership now, making less than I imagined, living in a small apartment, and I've learned more about humanity in 8 months than in my previous 52 years. I've learned what it feels like to be dismissed by wealthy customers. I've experienced a fraction of what you experience every day, and it's humbling and shameful. I don't know if I can become better, but I'm trying. I volunteer at a homeless shelter. I'm reading books about racism I would have dismissed as politically correct. I'm in therapy trying to understand why I needed to hurt people to feel powerful. I'm writing because you deserved respect and dignity, and I tried to destroy you for entertainment. I want you to know that your grace, your refusal to be cruel when you had every right, taught me something about the difference between power and character. I hope you're well. I hope your father is healthy. I hope you never have to think about me again. But if you do, I hope you know it changed me, or at least started the process." Marcus read it 3 times, feeling emotions he couldn't name. Anger that an apology could undo trauma. Satisfaction that Gregory faced consequences. Sadness it took losing everything before he developed empathy. Hope that maybe people could change. He saved the email but didn't respond. He didn't owe Gregory anything. Maybe someday he'd respond. But not today. As Marcus prepared for his trip to Seoul for Samsung Consulting, he thought about the journey. 3 years of devastation. One night that changed everything. 8 months of rebuilding. The path hadn't been fair, but it taught him about resilience and dignity that no classroom could provide. The night before his flight, Marcus stood on his balcony overlooking Boston's lights. Somewhere out there, Gregory was closing up a dealership, heading to a small apartment, living a life he never imagined. Somewhere, servers and housekeepers and drivers were finishing shifts, heading home to families and dreams and struggles wealthy customers would never see. Somewhere, brilliant minds were working jobs that didn't reflect their potential, dealing with circumstances that didn't define their worth, surviving storms that would eventually pass. And Marcus Thompson, Dr. Marcus Thompson, stood on his balcony feeling grateful. Not for trauma endured, but for having survived it. For maintaining dignity when everything else was stripped away. For proving his worth wasn't determined by job title or bank account, but by character, knowledge, refusal to become bitter. Some stories don't need manufactured inspiration. They need honesty, with all their pain and complexity intact. The world doesn't need simple triumph over evil. It needs complicated stories about people surviving with whatever dignity they can hold on to, about how injustice operates through daily dismissals and casual cruelties, about how change happens slowly and imperfectly. Marcus went inside, finished packing, went to bed early. Tomorrow he'd fly to Seoul, consult for one of the world's largest companies, use his expertise to bridge cultural divides. But tonight, he was just Marcus, a man who survived, who rebuilt, who refused to let circumstances define him. And that, more than any money or success or viral fame, was enough. If this story moved you, if it made you think about how you see and treat people around you, share it. Not for views or likes, but because these conversations about dignity matter. Because somewhere right now, someone brilliant is working a job that doesn't reflect their capabilities, and they need to know survival is possible, rebuilding is possible, that maintaining dignity when the world tries to strip it away is the ultimate victory. The story of Marcus Thompson isn't about revenge or even redemption. It's about the truth that every person you encounter is carrying struggles you know nothing about, possessing depths you haven't explored, deserving dignity regardless of circumstances. It's about choosing to see people rather than looking through them. It's about recognizing character isn't demonstrated when life is easy but when it's impossibly hard and you maintain your humanity anyway. That's a lesson worth remembering. Because we're all just people trying to survive our storms with whatever dignity we can salvage, hoping someone will see us for who we really are rather than who circumstances have temporarily forced us to be. Some victories aren't about defeating enemies. They're about refusing to let enemies make you forget who you are. And that kind of victory, quiet and internal as it might be, is often the most important victory of all.